And this ties itself directly back into the research that you've actually conducted, particularly in the research where you were looking at, whether decision makings of individuals were outcome based as opposed to being derived from some sort of morality preference. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and what the outcomes of your research were and what you were trying to achieve with it?
Yeah, indeed. This leads us to this line of research of mine. I mentioned so far these models based on consequences. So these are models where the utility function depends on the monetary payoffs of all the people involved in the interaction. And these are called outcome-based models because they are based on outcomes. Around 2015, I did an experiment where I first realized that people's behavior sometimes cannot be explained by any outcome-based model. And the experiment was very simple and was correlating two types of behaviors. The cooperation in the prisoner's dilemma. So maybe I should say a couple of words about the prisoner's dilemma. So in the prisoner's dilemma, there are two people, and each of them has to decide whether to pay a cost to give a greater benefit to the other person. So let's make it simple. Each person is given $1 and has to decide whether to give this dollar to the other person. In that case, the dollar gets multiplied by 2 and becomes $2. So what happens is that if both people exchange, so they decide to give to the other person the $1, then they both receive $2 because the dollar get multiplied. Yeah, cooperation. But each person has an incentive to deviate from cooperation, because if I'm sure that you will give me your $1, then I get $2 from you, and I can keep the dollar that I have and end up with $3 instead of 2. So I have an incentive to keep my dollar. But if you reason the same way, you also keep the $1, so we end up with $1 each instead of 2. So cooperation is optimal for the collective, for the group made of the two of us, but it's not individually optimal because there is an incentive to deviate. And I was correlating, so I ran an experiment with this game, and after this game, or before it was randomized, there was a deception game. It's a game where people could lie to create a certain distribution of money. And to be precise, the experiment was as follows. I give you a private information that was just the outcome of a die roll, and you can report this outcome truthfully, and in which case you and also me, we get $1 each. Or you can lie. In that case, you get $2 and I also get $2. So lying is Pareto optimal. So it benefits both the liar and another person. Yes, it's efficient. And suppose that the utility function that people compute in their mind when they make a decision is outcome-based, and in particular is social efficient, then you should observe the same behavior in the two games, because, well, what you should observe is that people who lie in the deception game should cooperate in the prisoner's dilemma, because the payoffs are identical. It's $2 each. While people who tell the truth in the prisoner's dilemma, in the deception game, should defect in the prisoner's dilemma because the payoffs are identical, 1-1.
Right.
And what we found is exactly the opposite. We found that people who lie in the deception game are those who defect in the prisoner's dilemma. And conversely, people who tell the truth in the deception game are those who cooperate in the prisoner's dilemma. How is it possible to rationalize this behavior? It's not possible through standard outcome-based utility functions. And no social preferences can explain this behavior. And our argument was, what we tried to push forward as an explanation is that people do not actually compute a utility that depends only on the economic consequences. Of course, economic consequences can play a role and certainly play a role, but they are not the whole part of the story. What we argue is that people have also more general preferences for doing the morally right thing. So we call this moral preferences. People that have these moral preferences, they tell the truth in the deception game because telling the truth is morally right. And they cooperate in the prisoner's dilemma because cooperation is morally right. So these moral preferences can explain this behavior that we observed beyond outcome-based social preferences.